I'm going to share with you two stories today. The first one is called Under the Veil, and it's about a guy who goes on a work trip when one of his coworkers shares something so secret with him that not only leaves him speechless, but makes him wish he would have stayed home instead. The second one is called Checkered Shorts, and it's about a lady who drives home late at night, and after pulling into her garage, there's someone there waiting for her that she doesn't know. It was a routine business trip, just a 3-person assignment out of town. Daniel was the youngest of the team, fresh out of school, and still trying to figure out office politics. The other two were seasoned professionals, Kareem, a quiet but friendly guy in his 40s, and a woman named Ranaya, who was polite, well-spoken, and always wore a hijab. At first glance, she gave off the vibe that she was just a no-nonsense working mom who could hold her own in a boardroom. The first day went smoothly. They spent it touring a partner facility, taking notes, and running through presentations. By evening, Kareem and Ranaya invited Daniel out for dinner, but he was too wiped from travel and working, so he politely declined and just headed back to his hotel. The next morning, Daniel noticed something was off. Kareem was unusually quiet. His movements were tight, and his expressions was kind of unreadable. They had a rental car, so when it came time to leave, Kareem was driving and he insisted that Daniel would sit up front in shotgun. It was a weirdly specific request, and though Daniel was puzzled, he didn't make much of it and he went and sat in front. That evening after work, Ranaya suggested that the guys would just come over and hang out and have some beers. Kareem hesitated, but eventually he agreed. Daniel figured it couldn't hurt, and he also went, thinking that this is a great opportunity to get to know my coworkers a little better. So the night started out light. It was just small talk here and there, they had a few laughs, and for the most part they just passed a few drinks between them. But something shifted. Ranaya's tone turned flirtatious. Her gaze was lingering way too long on Kareem. She started even insinuating that he would take his shirt off, smiling in a way that would make Daniel just feel weird about it. Kareem stiffened. He just awkwardly said no and excused himself back to his room, saying that he was just calling it a night. Daniel, however, he hesitated. He didn't want to be rude or anything like that in front of one of his newest coworker, then he figured that he might stick around and get to know her a little better. This proved to be a big mistake for Daniel. You see, once Kareem left, Ranaya's entire demeanor changed again. She moved closer to Daniel and pulled out her phone, and she started showing him some pictures of her children, and for a moment, she seemed normal again. She's just a proud mom, Daniel thought. Then she swiped to another photo. This one happened to be of a younger man. He was shirtless in this picture and he was smirking at the camera. He looked like the kind of guy who knew he was good looking and he curated his Instagram like he was applying for model jobs. He's a model, she said. And the things that Ranaya said next were baffling. It went something like this. See these pictures here? This is my family. Oh, and who's that? Oh, him? Oh, he's a model. You see, him and I, we're in love. I'm leaving my husband for him. Oh. But Ranaya wasn't finished. She proceeded to scroll through a dozen more pictures. A lot of them were of the same man, taken at strange angles in just different locations. They weren't selfies, but they weren't posed either. These look like pictures you would take if you're doing surveillance on somebody. Some were across the street. Some clearly were taken from inside a car. And for the most part, it was just his everyday life. It was pictures of him at work, getting coffee, or entering his apartment. Some even showed other people, his friends, maybe his family. For Daniel, it felt like the air in the room just went ice cold. And he tried to play it cool, but a knot had formed in his stomach. His instincts, which had remained quiet until now, began screaming at him. This wasn't just a midlife crisis that Ranaya was going through and finding a crush to cling onto. This was a lot more serious. This was stalking. But this whole time, Ranaya was just smiling and scrolling through all these pictures. Daniel's throat just went dry. Then, without warning, she reached up and started to unwrap her hijab. And as she pulled it down, she revealed her scalp, which was patchy, with large bald spots and only wisps of hair in between. The sight of Ranaya in this light just made her look like something straight out of a horror film. It was like she was taking off a mask to reveal who she really was. Daniel couldn't move for a moment. His thoughts were racing and his heart was pounding so loud that it filled his ears. I'm getting a little tired. I think I'm gonna head out. Renaya didn't blink at this. She just tilted her head and said, okay, in an emotionless way. But Daniel didn't wait for more. He left. His heart was pounding and he was walking so fast, he got to his door and just barely remembered to grab his ski out of his pocket to get into his room. But the next morning, Renaya acted like nothing had happened the previous night. She was again back to herself, being pleasant and calm, smiling like a normal coworker again. Daniel, later that afternoon, he went and met up with Kareem and pulled him aside. Hey, about last night, you seemed a little tense. Did something happen? Yeah, she made a move on me. That's why I wanted you to sit up front yesterday. But neither of them spoke much after that. They finished the work trip and returned home and quietly continued their daily lives. Daniel actually quit that job a few months later. He told people a better opportunity had just come up and it was safer and closer to home. He learned something that night. Something he wouldn't forget easily. You see, when your gut tells you there's something wrong, listen. Because sometimes beneath the polite small talk and the professional smile, there's something much darker lurking just beneath the surface. And sometimes the darkness is staring right back at you. Or in this case, it's just holding a phone with a bunch of secrets you don't really care to see. Nina Becker, who's 25, lives in a quiet town nestled in the German countryside. The kind of place where life just kind of slows down after dark. The streets roll up early and by midnight, it's so still you can hear your own footsteps echo across the pavement. That night started out like any other. Dinner, laughter, catching up with old friends. She was on vacation after all, so she was enjoying her time. And staying out late during the week wasn't a big deal. Around 1:30 in the morning, she said her goodbyes, climbed into her car, and began the 30-minute drive home through empty roads and dim streetlights. As she approached her neighborhood, everything felt normal, peaceful even. Her apartment was located in a main street, but it rarely saw traffic after hours. She shared an underground garage with a few other tenants, but the entrance of this garage was kind of tucked away beside the building like it was some sort of forgotten alley. It was easy to miss if you didn't know where to look. Nina turned into her driveway and paused just long enough to press the button on her remote for the garage door. It slowly started to roll open and she patiently waited until it was finished. But she wasn't just pulling in straight into her garage, she was reversing in, so she had to do a whole maneuver to turn her car around and then back into the spot. And this is how she would always park. She finally backed in all the way and left the car running while she was looking for something in her center console. Maybe it was a lip balm or gum or something she was looking for. She couldn't remember. Then as she was searching through her console, she happened to look up, and there he was. It was a man standing in the garage in front of her, about 10 feet away, and he was just staring at her. And Nina noticed that he hadn't been there a second ago. She hadn't seen him when she reversed into the garage. Had he followed her on foot? Was he just hiding off to the side in the shadows? Either way, her body reacted before her brain did. She was shaking at this point and she slammed the lock button on her car to make sure all the doors were locked. And even though she was in this car with the doors locked now, it really didn't do much to calm her nerves. After all, this guy was still standing there in front of her looking at her. The man looked to be in his mid-40s. He was tall, broad-shouldered, he had some messy hair that was clinging to his forehead. He shouted something, asking for her phone, claiming that his car had broken down and he needed to make a call. But Nina had driven home this whole time for 30 minutes, and since she lives in a very desolate place, she hadn't seen any cars in the road that were stranded. Especially that long stretch of road that leads to her house. It's open and there's no trees around. She would be able to see a car off in the distance. Yet this man had just appeared out of nowhere, seemingly. And not only that, but he had made it all the way inside of her garage without Nina noticing him. All she could do was just sit there frozen in place and blink at him. Her mind was a blur at this point. He seemed to notice the hesitation in her eyes because he stepped closer to the car and insisted again, louder and more aggressive this time. "My car's in the next town over, just give me your phone." Nina was even more confused at this point. The next town over was nearly an hour away on foot, and this guy didn't seem like he had been walking for that long. Then, she noticed what he was wearing. Or rather, what he wasn't wearing. All she could see was a wrinkled pair of knee-length checkered shorts. No shirts, no shoes, no jacket, nothing else, just the shorts. His pale skin looked all clammy, and while it wasn't cold or snowing or anything, Nina still felt really cold to the bone and was gripping onto the steering wheel. There was no reason anyone should be walking around at this time, especially only wearing shorts and nothing else. Especially following a woman into an underground parking garage. She shook her head and just shouted at him, "I can't help you, you need to leave." But the man didn't budge. Instead, he just continued to stare at her with eyes that just didn't seem right. They almost looked distant, as if he wasn't fully there. And while he continued to ask for her phone, his tone started to turn a little bit more pleading, but that wasn't really doing much for Nina as far as calming her down. "You don't need to be scared of me, just give me your phone." The man lingered a little bit longer. Then with a sharp, frustrated breath, he just turned and left. And he disappeared as fast as he had appeared. Nina quickly pressed the garage again and didn't breathe until that garage was fully closed. And only then did she finally turn her car off. But the silence that followed after that in some ways felt louder than the shouting the guy was just doing. She quickly gathered her things even though she was still shaking, and there was no cell reception in this garage, so calling anyone at this point was out of the question. Every step she took from her car to the hallway door felt like a mile to her. But then she remembered. There was a back entrance to the garage, not just the front door. And she couldn't remember if she had locked it before, or if the man knew about this door. And since she sat in her car for a little bit after the fact, this man could have found the door and gotten in through the back. And maybe she just didn't hear him. She got out of her car quickly and sprinted to the back door. The other thing to know about this back door is that it had a history of jamming. It wouldn't always open on the first try, and you had to jimmy with it to get it open. It was a thick, heavy wood door with a big old padlock on it, and all she could think about as she was sprinting towards this door was, please don't be jammed. Please open on the first try. And thankfully, it swung open without any resistance. She got inside of her apartment, slammed the garage door closed, then she ran to her ground floor apartment, locking the door, bolting the windows, and shutting all the blinds. And only once all of that was done, she finally allowed herself to relax on the couch. She just sat in the dark with her phone in her hand, debating whether to call the police or not. But why would she even tell them? The man hadn't hurt her or done any damage at all. He didn't even try to break in. He simply turned around and left. He had just stood there, demanding her phone. That's the extent of his intrusion. But Nina knew better. Something about this entire encounter felt wrong. No shirt, no shoes, no broken down car. It was just a strange man lurking in the dark, waiting for the perfect moment for her to come home. Thankfully though, Nina never saw this guy again. But something in her changed after that. Now she never exits the car until the garage is completely closed. She always double checks her locks before going out of the house. And she takes all of these precautions because you never know what could happen. What if she hadn't locked the doors? What if the garage door had jammed and she wouldn't be able to make it out of there to get to her apartment? She doesn't like thinking about how differently this could have ended, but she does think about it every time she drives home in the dark. And even though it's been over a year, there's still times when she sits in her car frozen with both hands on her steering wheel, waiting for that door to close, just in case. And that's been it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. But for now, I'll see you on the next story.